Welcome to the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. Here's your host, Brien Hanley.
Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brien Hanley. Welcome back to the Big 12 Insiders. I hope everybody had a good weekend. I did. I am on my journey of trying to lose some weight here. So got 25 pounds by July 12th. That is the date. So I've been on my walking shoes. I am super sore. So, but it is what it is. People got to stay healthy as long as possible. So appreciate everybody being in here, man. We got a good show today. Talking to Shedeur Sanders, and his fall from, I don't know if you want to necessarily say fall from grace, but definitely a humbling experience in the NFL draft. Now, granted, I understand that it's not necessarily Big 12 news, but it is Big 12 news because he played in the Big 12 conference as the best quarterback in the conference last year. So we're going to talk about why, and we're going to talk about what he can do to possibly fix all of this. So, but before we get started, again, appreciate everybody being in here. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, continue to get into those comments, and always hit the notification bell so you know exactly when Big 12 Insiders content comes out. So let's get into this. So first thing is Shedeur Sanders. He drops to the 5th round. Cleveland Browns move back up into the 5th round, pick him at 144. First off, I shouldn't say first off. Let's talk about the Cleveland Browns for a second. How bad of an organization is this? You took a quarterback in the 3rd round in Dillon Gabriel, which I have no idea why they took Dillon Gabriel in the 3rd round. Let's start there, okay? But then in the 5th round, you move up to take another quarterback? See if you took a quarterback in the 1st round or maybe the 2nd round, and then at the 7th round, you took another quarterback. Oh, okay, I get it. But the 3rd round and then the 5th, not only in the 5th, you move up in the 5th to do it. First, it screams that the ownership was all over this. That's the one thing that it screams, that the ownership made them take this pick. Dillon Gabriel, the Browns are going to Brown. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I don't want to get caught up on that because I can talk about how bad of a franchise that is. We can talk about that till the end of time. But Shedeur Sanders falls. Now, here's the thing. Everyone said, I think everybody saw Mel Kiper literally crash out. If you watched the draft, you saw him crash out about NFL, evaluating quarterbacks, all this stuff. And Louis Riddick basically put him in his place and said, hey, man, they get to decide. You don't get to decide who's good, who's bad, when they get drafted. You don't get to make that decision. The NFL personnel, those are the people that get, because Louis Riddick, while he works on ESPN, he is an NFL evaluator. He is a talent evaluator. That is what he's wanting to do. He wants to be a GM. So he's a front office. He's worked in the front office in NFL franchises before. So basically, Mel is insulting him on TV, and Louis Riddick said, hey, man, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. And I love the back and forth. I loved it. It was great. But everybody said that Shedeur was a top quarterback. Maybe not the top quarterback, but he was definitely the 2nd best quarterback. And I don't think that was up for debate. As far as what everybody was, the evaluation process. Now, does he have limitations? Yes. He doesn't have a cannon of an arm. He can make every NFL throw, but he doesn't have a cannon. He's not a superior athlete. He did not get his father's genes as far as being an athlete. He didn't get that, but he can move around. He's not just a statue, but he's not a superior athlete. Doesn't have a cannon of an arm. What he does well is he's got a high football IQ, very high football IQ. He takes a lot of sacks trying to play hero ball sometimes. But I think a lot of that was because of the piss-poor offensive lines that he was playing behind at Colorado. Anybody that watched Colorado football the last 2 years can tell you their line was atrocious. It just was. You hate to pick on kids, but the facts are the facts. The line was terrible. And him trying to play hero ball instead of getting the ball out of his hands, throwing it away, to live another day, he didn't do that. And that's a problem. You can't do that in the NFL, especially those guys coming a hell of a lot faster. No hero ball. And he did that. but he's got a super high football IQ, very accurate with the football, anticipates throwing lanes. Like, he's not a guy that says, hey, I'm in college, I'm just waiting for the guy to get open, then I'm going to throw the ball. He doesn't do that. Okay, this is where the window's going to be. I'm going to throw it, and then my guy's going to run open into that window. He does that better than any college quarterback that came out this year. But that might be also the problem, is the quarterback class was weak, people. And maybe not enough people just want to talk about that and say that and admit that. But the quarterback class of 2025 for the NFL, it just wasn't very good. And a lot of teams are like, look, we don't need to reach for a quarterback, and they didn't. And I applaud them for it, because if you know me on my Steelers Almighty channel, I talk about it all the time as far as why NFL franchises pay these mediocre quarterbacks the top dollar. Like, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? You don't have to. So I applaud them for not reaching for a bad quarterback class. But was he the sixth best quarterback? Now, some of this is his own doing. There was reports that came out that he interviewed bad, that him and Brian Daboll actually got into it, about being interviewed, about, they gave him some stuff to learn. He didn't learn it. Brian Daboll called him out. He didn't like being called out. And then Brian Daboll apparently got in his face about it, and they were almost nose to nose. First off, you're at a job interview. You shouldn't be going nose to nose with the guy who's interviewing you. On the flip side of that, as a coach, you're getting nose to nose with a guy that doesn't work for you? I mean, that would be my thing. I mean, two rights don't make a wrong, but Shedeur's trying to get into the NFL. This guy's trying to stay an NFL coach. I get it, but I don't know. To me, Shedeur's more at fault here, because, look, they give you an installation. They expect you to learn it, and you don't. And then they call you out for not learning it. Hey, man, I'm sorry. But he didn't do that. Humility isn't his biggest trait. Let's just say that. And it cost him. Coming out before the draft, talking about where you wouldn't go, or his father coming out saying where he wouldn't go, and all those kinds of things. When you have leverage, you can do that. When you don't have leverage, you can't do that. And they didn't have any leverage. Again, if he was the surefire number one pick, everybody says, well, look at Eli Manning. And nobody said anything about that. And you're right. Nobody talked about Eli Manning and Arch Manning doing the same thing to the San Diego Chargers at the time, the San Diego Chargers. But they had leverage because Eli was the surefire number one pick. There was no doubt about it. No ifs, ands, or buts. That was him. That is not the case with Shedeur Sanders. And it was never the case with Shedeur Sanders. So you didn't have the number one, the leverage. I understand the motive. I understand trying to do the same thing. And I think you can do that if you have leverage. John Elway did it. We've seen it from time to time, and it's fine. But Shedeur didn't have that leverage of being the best player in the draft. He didn't have that. So teams got put off by that. And I think the NFL, look, they can say they didn't do this. I think the owners just said, hey, man, we don't want this guy. There's no reason to take this guy. Now, some people say, well, there's a circus around him. And there was at Colorado. But NFL doesn't give those people access. Like Deion Sanders Jr., who's in charge of video and photography, all that stuff, he's not going to have access to the Cleveland Browns practice, Cleveland Browns locker room. He's not going to have access to any of that stuff. So having his circus, quote unquote, around in the locker room, on the practice field, on the team plane, none of that's going to happen. So people saying that, I don't even take them seriously, because they're just creating something to badmouth the kid about, because that's not going to be allowed in the NFL. So that kind of stuff, he had a circus in college, but that won't even be allowed. It's not even a factor in the NFL. So there's that. Now, his attitude and maybe throwing guys under the bus, I didn't necessarily see it a whole lot. I didn't see him throwing anybody under the bus, other than somebody asked him a question about another quarterback, and he said, well, those guys aren't taking the kind of hits that I'm taking. Well, he was telling the truth. I don't know that that's necessarily throwing your teammates under the bus. Just say, hey, I'm taking a lot of hits. Well, he was. Probably could have worded it a little bit differently. Probably could have just said, yeah, that guy, he's an incredible quarterback, man. I'd love to be in his situation. Something of that nature. He didn't even have to say that last part. Just, yeah, that guy's an incredible quarterback, man. I applaud him. But he didn't. He told the truth, and then people hung him out to dry for that. Well, that's part of learning. It's part of it. And maybe this, and I think this part of it has something to do with it as well, because it's not just one thing. You know me, I'm never going to say that it's all one thing. But also maybe Shedeur's just not spectacular. You know, maybe he's just not that good. Now, I don't think he was the sixth best quarterback in this draft. I don't think that for even the slightest bit. But what I would say is maybe, you know, if he was a second or a third round pick, maybe it makes sense because there wasn't any guys that were as good as him or that were really that good. Okay, great, fine. Fifth round, people are trying to send a message. And I think the message got received. Whether we like it or not, you know, the NFL holds the cards. You're trying to get into their league. You're trying to join their club. And if you come in and you do things that they don't like, they're not going to let you in. They just won't. And I think the NFL flexed its muscles and said, you don't have the leverage that some of these other guys had. I think that's the key part about this. When people talk about, well, they're only doing with what Arch Manning did, and nobody said anything about that, and nobody said anything about John Elway. And I've said from the beginning, I said, yeah, but those guys had leverage, man. They were the number one picks. They were the number one players in this draft. Shedeur Sanders was not that, but he acted like he was. And the NFL, they didn't like that. They're like, you're not the best player in this draft. You're not the number one pick. Why are you acting like you are the best thing since sliced bread when you're not? They didn't like it. And I think Deion had a lot to do with that. And they overplayed their cards. It happens. And sometimes you have to be smacked down. Now, here's the one thing that I would say is this is a huge opportunity for Shedeur Sanders. A gigantic opportunity for Shedeur Sanders because he's a fifth-round pick. They drafted a quarterback ahead of him to the same damn team, which, again, the Browns, Lord have mercy, that is a horrible franchise. But here's the situation. The Browns have some weapons on offense. I mean, they actually, other than the quarterback, they were so close to having a good draft, and then they said, you know what, we're going to Brown, and we're going to screw this whole thing up by taking two quarterbacks and 3 picks. But whatever. Whatever. And so they've got some things. I mean, they can move the football if they do this thing right. But Shedeur has a huge opportunity because if he's as good as number one he thinks he is and what other people say, this is what he's facing. A 40-year-old Joe Flacco, who they just brought back, who has zero athleticism. So, again, a 40-year-old guy, a Deshaun Watson, who, granted, they owe $92 million to, but the owner of the team has already come out and said, yeah, it was my bad. We missed on Deshaun Watson. Does that sound like somebody that's ever going to play for them again? I mean, when have you ever heard an owner come out and say, hey, yeah, we missed on this guy, but then he's still going to be your quarterback? I don't think so. So you got Deshaun Watson, you got Joe Flacco, you got Baby Hands Pickett, who's been on 3 teams in 3 years. You know, everybody, he was a backup in Philly. He was terrible in Pittsburgh, which is my squad. We got rid of him after 2 years. Goes to Philly. He won a Super Bowl as the backup. He was so good in Philly as the backup. They said, you know what? We don't want you to be our backup quarterback anymore. Here, go to Cleveland. And just traded him away. So you got that. Then you got Dylan Gabriel, who, look, let's just be honest. Shedeur Sanders is better than Gabriel, man. He is. There's going to be some that get in the comments that want to argue that and make crazy comments about it. You would be wrong, and you know you're wrong. You're just arguing to argue, and that's fine. I appreciate it. But Shedeur Sanders is better than him. And every talent evaluator everywhere said that he was better than him. It's not just me. It's not just Mel Kiper. It's not Todd McShay. Every single person. So those four are the people that you have to beat out. Okay, you got humiliated. You did. Now how are you going to fight? You going to be able to fight and show that you can fight through adversity? Or are you going to make excuses and, oh, I don't want to do this, and they treated me bad, and be the entitled kid that everybody says that you are? Here's your opportunity. You can either stand up and fight, or you can fold. One of the two. I would hope that he stands up and fights, but that's easier said than done. Sometimes when you've been handed a lot, you don't even know how to stand up and fight. And that's part of Shedeur. And it's not his fault. I don't even think it's his parents' fault. Look, as a parent, and I'm not one, but I have a dog. I give my dog everything under the sun. I can only imagine as a parent, if you have the means, you do the exact same thing. You want to teach them, but you want their life to be better than your life. That's parenting, I think. So for his family, his parents, to give him things and to treat him a certain way, maybe it hasn't helped him up to this point. But now's your opportunity. Hey, man, I'm not playing for my father anymore. He can't be in the way. He can't be in these meetings. He's not going to be doing any of this. It's time for me to stand up on my own and go earn a job, because it's an open competition. He's got an opportunity to win the starting job from day one. From day one, he has an opportunity to go win this thing. And I'm not saying if he doesn't win it immediately, he's a failure. I'm not saying that. But I would say that Shedeur Sanders is in a great situation. A humbling situation? Yes. But in a great situation all the same, because he's got the opportunity to shut everybody up and to prove to the NFL, you know what? You screwed me over, but I'm not going anywhere. You made your point, but now I'm fighting back. He's got the opportunity. Will he do it? I don't know. But regardless of the situation, I just think it's a combination of everything that happened. But now it's time for him to stand up. It's time for him to stand up. Doesn't matter how you got here, you're here. Now it's time to do it. Because the same thing would be said if he was the first pick in the draft taken. Doesn't matter how you got there. Now you're there. Now you got to put up or shut up. This is the same thing. It'd be one thing if he was going to a quarterback room that was full of guys, a ton of veterans that have multiple All-Pros, an entrenched starter, something of that nature, where he wasn't going to have an opportunity to play for maybe 4 or 5 years. That isn't the case. He's got an opportunity right now. And you have the opportunity to go take it. Go to nothing getting handed to you. You have the opportunity to go take the job. Now, are you good enough? We're going to find out. So appreciate everybody, again, tuning in, man. Thank you, guys. I just thought that was important to talk about because, again, Big 12 quarterback, whether you like or dislike him, whether you agree with how he got here, or how he didn't, this is the reality of the situation laid out for you. I don't want to hear about they colluded against Dion and all that. And maybe they did. Maybe they did. But here's where you are. You have an opportunity. And it's an opportunity that most people that have ever walked the face of this earth, they don't get. Now you've got one. Go earn it, young man. Talk to you guys soon, man. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you for watching the Big 12 Insiders, your Big 12 sports show. This has been a Spirit Street production.